Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. It all began one Friday morning when Merlin was getting ready for a weekend trip to Las Vegas. Her best friend Emma was about to get married, for the second time. Yes, you read that right, the second time. Emma's first marriage had ended badly, all because she couldn't resist the temptation of another man. I had always harbored suspicions about Emma, but Merlin, ever loyal, defended her without hesitation. "She's changed," Merlin insisted, carefully folding a sleek black dress into her suitcase. "She's ready to settle down this time." I shot her a skeptical look. "Vegas for the bachelorette party? Really?" Merlin sighed dramatically, rolling her eyes. "Andrew, please, don't start. It's just for 2 days and I'll be with the girls the whole time." She kissed me goodbye and promised to call each night. Though I wasn't thrilled about it, I trusted her, or I thought I did. On Saturday night, I was lounging on the couch watching TV when my phone vibrated. It was my cousin Matt calling. He was in Vegas that weekend, celebrating a promotion with friends. "Hey man," he said, sounding uneasy. "I'm not sure how to say this, but I think I saw Merlin at a club." My frown deepened. "Yeah, she's there for Emma's bachelorette party." "Are you sure? Because she's not just with the girls," Matt replied, his voice cautious. "She's with a guy, and they're pretty close." My stomach dropped. "Close? What do you mean by that?" I asked, my heart racing. "Dancing? Hugging?" "It doesn't look innocent," Matt answered. I could feel my head start to spin. "Are you sure it's her?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yeah, I'm sure," Matt confirmed. "Do you want me to intervene? Let her know I'm here?" I paused, my heart pounding. If Matt stepped in now, Merlin would know someone was watching her. She might stop, but it wouldn't change the fact that she had crossed a line. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. "No," I said firmly. "Don't confront her. Just keep an eye on her." An hour later, my phone buzzed again. It was Matt. I braced myself, already dreading what he was about to say. "She kissed him, Andrew," Matt said, his voice tight. "I have a photo." For a moment I couldn't breathe. It felt as if the air had vanished from the room. My throat went dry and my heart hammered against my ribs. "Send it," I whispered, barely able to speak. Seconds later, the message arrived. My hand trembled as I opened it. And then everything seemed to tilt. There she was, Merlin, my wife of 12 years. Her arms wrapped around another man in a dimly lit club. His hands were on her waist, their lips locked in a kiss that was anything but casual. I stared at the photo for what felt like an eternity. The image seared into my mind, her flushed face, her fingers resting on his shoulders, the unmistakable intimacy between them. It was real, and there was no denying it. "They're leaving the club now," Matt said. "Should I follow them?" Without hesitation, I said, "Yes. Don't lose track of them. Let me know where they go." The next 30 minutes felt like an eternity. I sat on the edge of the couch, staring at my phone, waiting for Matt's updates. Each second dragged on, feeling endless. I imagined Merlin walking out of that club, laughing with this man, hand in hand, strolling down the bright, flashing streets of Vegas. Finally, my phone rang again. It was Matt, his voice strained. "They're heading to a hotel," he said. "I'm following them now. They're not even trying to hide it." "He's got his arm around her," Matt added. My stomach churned, and I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the thought. "Which hotel?" I asked, my voice tight. When Matt named the hotel, I recognized it instantly. It was Merlin's hotel. "They're at the elevator now," Matt said, his voice tense. "It's just the two of them. No one else around." I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, and my thoughts spiraled. This was the confirmation I had been dreading. "I don't think they're coming back down tonight," Matt said softly. I was paralyzed, unable to speak. I just sat there, numb. "Thanks, Matt," I said quietly. "I'll take it from here." "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. "No," I replied, my voice raw, "but I'll figure it out." When we hung up, I remained motionless, staring at the photo on my phone. The truth was right in front of me, undeniable. Merlin had crossed a line at the club, and now she was in a hotel room with another man, about to cross yet another irreversible boundary. I considered calling her, demanding an explanation, but what good would that do? She'd deny everything, twist the truth. I knew I had to confront her face to face. Only then would I get the real answers. I had to see it with my own eyes, even if it destroyed me in the process. My heart was in pieces, my hands shaking as I booked the earliest flight to Vegas. That night, sleep was a stranger. My thoughts raced, the image of the photo Matt sent and his messages replaying in my mind. Each time I shut my eyes, I saw Merlin in that club, her lips pressed against another man's. By morning, I was at the airport, sitting rigidly in one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs by the gate. The flight to Vegas felt like it lasted forever. My stomach churned, a disgusting mix of anger, betrayal, and unease twisting inside me. I couldn't stop staring at the photo on my phone, trying to make sense of how things had gotten this far. How could the woman I loved, the woman I thought loved me, do this to us? When I landed, Matt was waiting near baggage claim. He looked as drained as I felt, his usual confident demeanor replaced by an unfamiliar seriousness. "You okay?" he asked, giving my shoulder a quick, sympathetic pat. "No," I answered flatly, "but I'm here." "You sure about this?" he asked, studying me intently. "It's going to be messy, Andrew," I said, my jaw clenched tight, "but I need more proof." After several hours of staying in the background, Matt and I tracked Merlin and her friends to a rooftop bar with a stunning view of the Vegas Strip. It was the kind of place she loved, dimly lit, loud music, overpriced drinks. I stayed near the entrance, blending into the shadows, while Matt moved closer to keep an eye on them. "She's with Emma and the others," Matt whispered through the phone. "They're sitting by the edge of the patio." I edged closer, trying to stay hidden. From where I stood, I could see her clearly. Merlin, my wife, laughing as though she had no cares in the world. She looked flawless, her hair perfectly styled, the dress she wore hugging her body in all the right places. It was the same dress she had packed earlier that morning before she left for this trip, the one she had claimed was just for fun. A wave of betrayal crashed over me. That dress wasn't for me, it was for him. And then, there he was. I recognized him instantly, the man from the photo, tall, broad-shouldered, with a confident grin and an arrogant swagger. But he wasn't alone. Another man stood beside him, likely his friend. My blood began to boil as I watched Merlin's face light up when she saw him. She stood up, adjusted her dress, and wrapped her arms around his neck as he leaned in. "She's all over him," Matt murmured through the phone. "I can't believe it." Neither could I. I stood frozen, my fists clenched tight. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to confront them, to demand the truth, to tear into this guy. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed undeniable proof, something she couldn't talk her way out of. The minutes dragged by as I watched them. The rest of the group faded into the background, and all I could focus on was Merlin and the man, laughing, touching, leaning closer. Then it happened. He leaned in and brushed a strand of hair from her face. She didn't pull away. Instead, she tilted her head, and their lips met in a slow, intentional kiss. I snapped a photo, my hands trembling with rage. But when I looked at the image on my phone, I knew it wasn't enough. A kiss could be explained away, twisted into something innocent. I needed more. Matt's voice crackled through the phone again, tight with tension. "You get that?" he asked. "I got it," I replied, my teeth grinding. "But we're not done. Let's see where this goes." After a while, the group finished their drinks and began to leave. Merlin walked out with the man by her side, while his friend chatted closely with Emma. The other women from the bachelorette party split off, laughing and heading further down the strip, clearly planning to continue the night. Matt and I followed from a distance, staying out of sight as Merlin and Emma walked hand in hand with the two men toward her hotel. My heart raced with every step, the crushing weight of what I was about to discover pressing down on me. When they reached the hotel entrance, Merlin briefly looked around, scanning for anyone who might be watching. Then, She and Emma led the two men inside. Matt and I slipped into the lobby just in time to see them step into the elevator together, the four of them, disappearing behind the sliding doors. My heart shattered. "What's the plan, Andrew?" Matt asked. Without hesitation, I answered, "We're ending this. I'm not leaving without the truth." Inside the lobby, I walked up to the front desk, my phone gripped tightly in my hand. I hadn't rehearsed anything. I just knew I had to act. The receptionist, a young man in his 20s, greeted me with a polite smile. "How can I help you, sir?" I pulled up a photo from my wedding day. In it, Merlin and I were smiling, our arms wrapped around each other, full of hope for the future. I showed it to the receptionist. "That's my wife," I said, my voice steady but cold. "She's been staying here for the weekend. I need to get into her room." The receptionist hesitated, his smile faltering as he looked at me with uncertainty. "I'm sorry, sir," he began, his voice unsure. "We have strict privacy rules for our guests." I interrupted him, my tone firm. "I understand your policy, but my wife is upstairs, and she's betraying me right now. I need to see it for myself." I leaned in closer, speaking softly. "This isn't just a feeling. I have evidence." I showed him the photo Matt had taken of Merlin kissing another man, my hand slightly shaking as I held it out. The receptionist glanced at the photo, his eyes widening. He seemed torn between adhering to his professional duties and showing compassion. "Please," I urged, my voice cracking with desperation. "I just need to know the truth. I'm not asking for anything more." He let out a long breath, clearly conflicted, before nodding slowly. "All right," he said, barely above a whisper. "But please, keep this discreet." He handed me a keycard, his fingers brushing mine for a brief moment. "Room 821, he added quietly. "Thank you," I responded, my voice thick with a mixture of dread and reluctant gratitude. The elevator ride to the 8th floor felt endless, my heart pounding in my chest, each beat seeming to echo in my ears. Matt had stayed in the lobby, ready to step in if things took a turn, but this was something I needed to face alone. As I stood before the door to room 821, I hesitated, my hand trembling as I held the key card. I pulled out my phone, started recording, and swiped the card through the reader. The green light blinked on, and the door creaked open. What I saw inside was worse than anything I could have imagined. Merlin was in bed with the man, his shirt discarded on the floor, and hers was nowhere to be seen. They froze at the sight of me, their faces twisted in shock and guilt. But there was more. On the opposite side of the bed, Emma was tangled with the man's friend. The laughter that had filled the room moments ago vanished as she turned to face me, her expression full of panic. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice quivering with emotion yet cutting through the stillness. "Someone explain!" Merlin scrambled to cover herself, clutching the sheets tightly around her chest. "Andrew, wait!" she cried, panic evident in her voice. "It's not what it looks like." I let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "Not what it looks like?" I scoffed. "You're literally in bed with him, Merlin." I pointed at the man, who couldn't even meet my gaze as he hastily pulled on his shirt. Tears welled in Merlin's eyes, but I felt no sympathy for her. She had made her choice. Emma, ever the opportunist, tried to intervene. "Andrew, calm down," she said, wrapping herself in a robe. My anger turned to her instantly. "Don't even start, Emma," I snapped. "You're just as bad. Cheating on your fiancé days before the wedding? You think I'll let him marry you without knowing what you've done?" Her face drained of color and she stammered, "It's not like that. It was a mistake." I spun back to Merlin, my voice sharp with accusation. "A mistake? No. Emma may try to pretend her mess was a mistake, but you, Merlin, you brought him here. You invited them here. This wasn't some accidental slip-up. This was planned, and you've been lying to my face all weekend." Merlin began sobbing, her cries grating against my nerves. "Andrew, please," she begged. "It didn't mean anything." "I was drunk," she said, trying to explain herself. "Drunk?" I interrupted, my disgust palpable. "Don't insult me, Merlin. I've been watching you all weekend. You weren't drunk when you kissed him at the club. You weren't drunk when you brought him back to your room last night. This isn't a mistake. It's a pattern." She opened her mouth to argue, but I raised my hand to silence her. "Don't," I said, my voice cold. "I don't want to hear it. You've said enough." I stopped recording and shoved my phone into my pocket, my chest heaving with emotion. I stormed out of the room, the full weight of what I had just seen sinking into me. Matt was waiting in the lobby, his face somber. "Well?" he asked, his concern evident. "It's over," I replied, my voice flat and emotionless. "I've seen enough." The next morning, I called my lawyer to start the divorce proceedings. I didn't hesitate. I couldn't stay in this marriage any longer. Later, I met Merlin in the hotel lobby, knowing this would be our final confrontation. She looked as if she hadn't slept, her eyes swollen and red from crying. When she saw me, her face softened, and she hurried toward me, as though a few words could fix everything. "Andrew, please," she begged. "It was a mistake. I was drunk. It didn't mean anything." "I love you," she said, her voice trembling, her face streaked with tears. I stood there, numb, the reality of everything crashing down on me. The woman I had trusted, the one I believed was my life partner, had shattered that trust beyond repair. "It was important enough for you to deceive me," I shot back, my voice as cold as stone. "It mattered enough for you to ruin everything we had built together." Her face twisted with desperation. "I never wanted it to get this far," she whispered. "It was only meant to be one night." "One night?" I interrupted, the disbelief thick in my tone. "You honestly think sleeping with someone else for a single night means nothing? And it wasn't just one night. It was two. How many times, Merlin? How many lies have we been living?" I demanded, my anger boiling over. "I'm done with you." She collapsed in on herself, sobbing quietly, her hands covering her face, but I stood firm, unmoved. The truth was inescapable. The woman I thought I knew no longer existed. Before I left Vegas, I made sure to send the video to Emma's fiancé. No matter how painful it would be for him, he deserved to know the truth. About an hour later, he called me. His voice trembled. "Thank you for telling me, Andrew," he said, his words shaky and broken. "I don't know what to say, but thank you. The wedding's off." I didn't say much in response. I wasn't looking for thanks or validation. I wasn't trying to feel better about myself. I just needed to make sure Emma faced the consequences of what she'd done. As I boarded the plane home, the weight of the past few days hit me with the force of a sledgehammer. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My marriage was over. The woman I thought I loved had betrayed me. But amid the pain, there was an unexpected feeling of relief. It wasn't the kind of relief I had expected, but it was there, undeniable. I deserved more than this. I deserved someone who wouldn't lie to me, someone who wouldn't shatter my trust. The days that followed were filled with endless paperwork, lawyers, and the overwhelming finality of it all. A week later, Merlin packed up her things. She did it silently, like she had no reason to stay. When the last of her bags were gone, it felt like the final chapter of my life had closed. The silence in the house was overwhelming, but oddly serene. I haven't spoken to her since, nor do I plan to. I've come to understand that some mistakes are simply too deep to forgive. Perhaps she felt remorse for what she had done, but regret doesn't heal the wounds. She made her decisions, and now I had to live with mine. For the first time in a long while, it felt like I was starting fresh, alone, but liberated. In the months that followed, I focused on myself. I threw myself into my work, rediscovered hobbies I'd long forgotten, and reconnected with friends I'd neglected. Slowly but surely, I started rebuilding my life from the wreckage she left behind. I wasn't looking for another relationship at that point, but one thing was certain. I wouldn't settle for anything less than someone who truly valued me, someone who understood that trust must be earned, not freely given. As for Merlin, I have no idea where she is now, what she's doing, or if she's learned anything from this. But that's no longer my concern. The only person I need to worry about now is myself. Some mistakes can't be forgiven. Some betrayals go too deep. In the end, I came to realize that walking away was the only option left. I had given everything, but she destroyed what we had, and that was something I couldn't repair. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Dreams don't come true by chance. They're built with persistence and hard work. My name is Kevin, and for nearly 2 decades, I've run a small car repair shop and car wash on the outskirts of town. What started as a humble business venture gradually became my life's work. Each engine I fixed, every dent I smoothed out, felt like more than just a task. It was a step towards something lasting. Over time, my shop became a reflection of my grit and determination. This wasn't just a job to me. It was my passion brought to life. From a young age, I'd been captivated by cars, enthralled by the challenge of diagnosing and fixing mechanical problems. Watching a customer's face light up when their vehicle ran like new again made every late night in the garage worth it. The business grew steadily, providing enough income to support my family and give us a stable, comfortable life. My wife, Hannah, was the cornerstone of that life, 10 years younger than me, but undeniably the most important person in my world. When I met Hannah, she was still searching for direction in her life. Her bright eyes and boundless determination immediately caught my attention. Her energy was infectious, and it wasn't long before we were inseparable. We married while she was still in school, and I promised her I'd do everything in my power to help her succeed. I picked up extra shifts, skipped vacations, and poured every spare dollar into her education. When she wanted to pursue additional certifications, I paid for those too. I never questioned whether it was worth it. I believed in her completely. Hannah's hard work paid off. She earned her finance degree and steadily climbed the corporate ladder, moving from one company to the next with growing roles and greater responsibilities. A little over a year ago, she landed a prestigious position at a high-profile investment firm. Her new salary even surpassed what I was making at the shop, but to me, it felt like a shared victory. We'd built something together, a home, a family with 2 wonderful kids, and a life filled with pride and accomplishment. Everything should have felt perfect. But perfection is an illusion, and I see that now. Her new role demanded more of her time, longer hours, business dinners, and endless networking events. At first, I brushed it off, telling myself it was temporary. Her drive and ambition were traits I'd always admired, but as the late nights turned into a routine, something shifted. She'd leave the house early, come home well after dinner, and even when she was physically present, her mind was somewhere else. Our conversations grew short and transactional, like 2 people checking items off a list. The warmth that once filled our home faded into a distant chill. The signs were there, plain as day. New, high-end clothes filled her closet, sleek, professional attire that seemed more suited for a runway than an office. Her perfume changed too, a rich, unfamiliar fragrance that lingered in the air long after she'd walked out. Her phone was always in her hand, vibrating with constant notifications. She'd leave the room to answer calls in hushed tones, and at night, I'd catch glimpses of her screen's glow as she tapped away at messages. But it wasn't just the physical signs that unsettled me. It was the way she'd stopped looking at me. Her eyes passed over me like I was furniture, something there but unimportant. One night I'd had enough. I'd spent too many evenings swallowing my doubt and pretending nothing was wrong. When she finally came home, 2 hours later than she'd promised, I was ready. She set her bag down without a word, her eyes on her phone. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced up briefly, her face a mask of irritation. "Can it wait? I'm exhausted." "No, it can't," I replied firmly. "You've been coming home late for weeks, always glued to that phone. You're not here for me, and you're not here for the kids. I'm done pretending everything's fine. What's really going on, Hannah?" She exhaled sharply, tossing her bag onto the table with too much force. "Kevin, don't do this right now. My job—" "No," I interrupted, anger surging through me. "Don't blame this on your job. I've supported you every step of the way. I've sacrificed for you. I've put in the work so you could chase your dreams. And this is what I get in return?" Her eyes locked on mine, hard and unyielding. "You want the truth? Fine. I'm seeing someone else." Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. "What?" I choked out, barely able to believe what I'd heard. "I'm having an affair, Kevin," she said flatly, her tone colder than I'd ever heard it. "It's with Christopher, my boss." I staggered back as if I'd been physically struck. How could you do this? To me? To our family?" My voice cracked as the weight of it all came crashing down. Her expression didn't change. If anything, it hardened. "I've changed, Kevin. I'm not the same person I was when we got married. I've grown. I've moved forward. You're still standing in the same place." "Standing still?" I echoed, stunned. "Yes," she shot back. "Look at you, covered in grease, wearing those same grimy clothes from the shop. Do you know how embarrassing it is to introduce you to my colleagues? Christopher's not like that. He's polished, he's confident, he's everything you're not." Her words carved into me, each one sharper than the last. I'd given her everything I had, my love, my time, my labor, so she could build the life she'd dreamed of. And now, I was just a source of shame to her. "So, you're embarrassed of me," I said quietly, my voice barely audible. Her gaze was unflinching. "Yes, Kevin, I am. I'm tired of pretending. Christopher's successful. He's respected. You wouldn't understand." I stood there, her words reverberating in my mind. I'd done everything to help her rise, everything to build the life we'd dreamed of. "You wouldn't even have that job if it weren't for me," I said finally. "I'm the one who paid for your education. I'm the one who made it possible for you to get where you are." She laughed bitterly. "And you think that means I owe you forever? No, Kevin. I'm not going to stay trapped in your little world just because you made sacrifices. I deserve more." I'd heard enough. "Then go get it, Hannah," I said, with a resolve I hadn't known I still had. "But you're not going to tear me down to do it. I'm done being your afterthought. If Christopher's the guy you've chosen, that's your call. Just be prepared to live with the consequences. We're finished." Her eyes widened in shock for a split second before narrowing into slits of pure fury. "You think you can just throw me away like garbage?" she spat. "Not exactly," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But I can file for divorce, and I will." Her face twisted with rage, and a curse slipped from her lips. Without another word, she snatched up her purse and stormed toward the door. "I'm leaving," she announced, tossing the words over her shoulder like she'd just claimed a victory. The door slammed behind her, its sharp echo lingering in the still air. Silence. It settled over the house like a heavy fog, and for a moment, it felt like everything had collapsed around me. But if there was one thing I'd learned, it was this. I'd never let anyone walk all over me again. The next morning, I headed to the auto shop. Work had always been my escape, a way to quiet the noise in my head, and after last night, I needed it more than ever. There were a few major repairs lined up for the day, and I figured keeping my hands busy would keep my mind from spiraling. When lunchtime rolled around, my crew headed out, leaving me alone with an old pickup and a stubborn bolt that refused to budge. For a while, it was just me, the bolt, and the faint hum of traffic outside. The garage had always been my sanctuary, until it wasn't. A sleek, high-end car pulled up just outside the entrance. The kind of car that's so polished it looks like it's never seen a pothole. The type you'd see on a billboard with a price tag big enough to make you laugh. The driver's door swung open, and out stepped a man who looked like he'd just walked off the set of a luxury watch commercial. Tailored suit, glossy leather shoes, and a walk so self-assured it bordered on parody. He strolled toward me, each step a declaration of his own importance. "You Kevin?" he asked, his voice thick with entitlement, like I should be honored he'd even spoken to me. "Depends," I muttered, not bothering to look up. "Who's asking?" "Name's Christopher," he said, puffing out his chest like a rooster in a fresh patch of dirt. "Hannah's boss. We need to have a chat." That's all it took. I knew exactly who he was. The man who'd wrecked my marriage was standing right in front of me. My grip on the wrench tightened, and for a brief moment, the idea of introducing it to his face seemed far too tempting. But I'm not an idiot. Ruining a perfectly good tool on him wouldn't be worth it. I kept my gaze on the bolt, giving him nothing more than my attention. Barely. If you've got something to say, spit it out, I said, still focused on my work. His grin widened, as if he'd just been handed a microphone. I'm here to make sure Hannah's taken care of, he declared, his tone slicker than motor oil. She's offering you a clean break. Sign over the house, don't ask for any of her money, and she'll keep the kids. Honestly, it's more than you're worth. I didn't even glance his way. I swapped out my tool, wiped my hands on a rag, and moved to the other side of the truck. My silence must have gotten under his skin because his voice got sharper, his footsteps pacing behind me. Don't act like you're above this, he barked. You're a mechanic, Kevin. Look at you. Grease on your hands, working in this dingy garage. Meanwhile, Hannah's moved up, and you're still stuck here. I glanced over my shoulder, grabbed a grease-covered wrench, and held it out to him. Here, hold this a second, I said. He took it. Oh, he took it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was his overblown ego, but he grabbed it like it was a trophy. The look on his face when he saw the black grease coating his hand, absolutely priceless. Thanks, I said, grinning as I took the wrench back. He stared at his hand like he'd just been cursed. His face flushed red, then darker, his eyes locked on me like I'd committed some kind of crime. You think that's funny? He growled, his voice trembling with rage. When we're done with you, you'll have nothing. No house, no cash, no kids. We've got the best lawyers money can buy. I shrugged, turning a bolt with slow, deliberate twists. That's nice, I said. Then what? His jaw twitched. His fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white. Then you'll be right here, he sneered, living like the dirty little nobody you've always been. He followed me around the garage like some TV lawyer in a closing argument, throwing around phrases like alpha male and real man, like he'd picked them up from a self-help podcast. I stopped, tilted my head, and let a slow grin spread across my face. You're right, Christopher. We're not in the same league. I leaned in just a bit. But if that fancy car of yours ever needs a real man to fix it, you'll know where to find me. His face went from red to purple, and for a second, I thought he might pop. This isn't over, he snarled, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. I'm doing this for Hannah, not for you. I'm giving you an out, and you'd be smart to take it. Hold that thought, I said, walking toward the wash station. Need to clean up. He followed, still going on about lawyers and court dates like I'd asked for a seminar. If he thought I was listening, he was wrong. When I reached the station, I grabbed the hose, turned it on, and, oops, the jet of freezing water hit him square in the chest. The look on his face as the icy blast soaked through his suit was a masterpiece. He flailed like a cat shoved into a bathtub. Damn it! I shouted, feigning annoyance. Who messed with the water pressure again? Rain-soaked and defeated, Christopher stood motionless, rivulets of water tracing down his face, while his hair clung to his head in limp, soggy strands. If roosters had bad days, this is exactly what one would look like after losing a backyard brawl. Fighting the urge to burst out laughing, I reached over and twisted the faucet handle, cutting off the deluge. That's rough, man, I said, barely able to keep a straight face. On the bright side, you're definitely refreshed now. Free spa treatment, no appointment required. For a heartbeat, Christopher remained still, water dripping from his chin, his eyes wide with disbelief. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air on a dock. I wondered if he'd lost the ability to speak, but that moment of calm didn't last. Are you out of your mind? He bellowed, his voice ricocheting off the garage walls. He pointed an accusatory finger straight at me, his face rapidly shifting from pale shock to volcanic red. Do you have any idea how much this suit costs? You're going to pay for this, Kevin. Count on it. Oh no, not the dreaded count on it threat, I said, grinning as he spun on his heel in a dramatic exit attempt. But the universe had other plans. His polished leather loafers, slicker than a seal on ice, betrayed him. With a sudden whoop, his feet shot forward and he crashed flat onto his back with a resounding thwap, the unmistakable sound of soaked fabric smacking concrete. That was it. I couldn't hold it in. Laughter erupted from me like an overshaken soda can. Oh no! Down goes the alpha male! I wheezed, tears stinging my eyes. Breaking news! Man defeated by puddle. Call the press. Right on cue, Dave, my ever-loyal assistant, walked in, his eyes darting between me, Christopher's sprawled-out form, and the mini flood soaking the garage floor. His brow wrinkled in confusion. Boss?" he asked, his gaze locking on me. "What's happening here?" "Dave, meet Christopher," I said, swiping at my tear-streaked face. "He's here on extremely important business." Being the good-hearted guy he is, Dave rushed to help. He crouched down, gripped Christopher's arm, and heaved, only for fate's mischief to strike again. There was a sharp "rrrr" as Christopher's high-end designer jacket gave up on life. The sleeve peeled clean off like a banana skin. Dave's eyes shot wide and his jaw dropped in horror. "Oh no! Oh no, no, no!" he muttered. Christopher's face twisted in anguish as he stared at the shredded fabric dangling from Dave's hand like a casualty of war. "My jacket?" he screeched, his voice cracking. "Do you know how much this jacket is worth? It's worth more than your whole paycheck, you idiots!" "Oof, that's rough, buddy," I said, trying to sound sympathetic but failing miserably. "That's what happens when you mix dry clean only with a high-pressure rinse cycle." Dave finally managed to haul him to his feet, though Christopher's pride was well beyond salvage. His face, tight with rage, glistened with water and barely restrained tears. Moments earlier, he'd strutted in with the air of a king. Now he looked like a drenched toddler who'd dropped his ice cream cone. Without a word, Christopher sloshed his way toward the exit, his soaked shoes releasing a pitiful squeak squeak with each step. "Hey, Chris," I called after him, still grinning like a fool. "Might want to rethink that count on it line next time." He didn't respond. He climbed into his luxury car, dripping water all over the pristine leather interior, and peeled out of the driveway, leaving behind a pair of tire streaks and a whole lot of wounded dignity. Dave's head swiveled toward me, his expression caught between disbelief and awe. "Boss, what was that?" "That, Dave," I replied, still gazing at the retreating car, "was divine justice served with a side of slapstick." Later that day, while working on a stubborn bolt, I found myself grinning out of nowhere. I'd just witnessed the world's most unplanned comedy show, live and in HD. Dave's eyes suddenly lit up with excitement. "Boss! The security cameras!" he exclaimed. "We've got to watch the footage. That was pure gold." He didn't need to convince me. We made our way to the office, pulled up the recording, and hit play. Watching it back, frame by frame, was somehow even funnier. Christopher's entrance, his shower, the cartoonish fall, all of it, crystal clear and immortalized. Dave was clutching his sides, howling like it was the funniest movie of the year. "His face! His face!" Dave choked between breaths. "I'm going to need oxygen, I'm serious." "Save that to a flash drive," I told him, still wiping tears from my face. "This one's going in the vault." Later, flash drive in hand, I sat across from Mr. Collins, a lawyer as sharp as a razor and just as ruthless. I laid it all out for him, Hannah's betrayal, Christopher's bluster, and the pièce de résistance, the video. When he watched it, a slow, predatory grin crept onto his face. "This," he said, jabbing a finger at the screen, "is a masterpiece. We'll make sure Hannah gets exactly what she's legally owed, and not a penny more." "That's the plan," I replied, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Back home, I got to work reclaiming my life. I changed every lock, called the bank to freeze joint accounts, and boxed up all of Hannah's designer clothes, shoes, and perfumes. I lined the boxes up by the door like luggage at a hotel checkout. When her car pulled up outside, I braced for impact. A minute later, I heard the sound of her jiggling the handle and cursing. "What the? Why won't this stupid door open?" she shrieked. My phone buzzed. "Kevin, what's going on? The door's stuck," she snapped. "Not stuck," I said, my voice calm as ever. "Locked. Go stay with your soggy peacock." Silence. Then, "You'll regret this, Kevin." "No," I said, hanging up with a smile. "I really don't think I will." "Open the door now!" Hannah's voice cut through the air, sharp and unyielding. "Not happening, Hannah," I said, my tone steady but resolute. "You made your bed, now lie in it. Your stuff's outside. Collect it and be on your way." Without waiting for a reply, I hung up. From the living room window, I watched her march toward the boxes, her face twisted in fury. She moved with the wild unpredictability of a toddler mid-tantrum, arms flailing as she muttered to herself. Every few steps, she'd whip her head around to glare at the house, her eyes brimming with unspoken curses. As she hoisted the final box into the trunk of her car, she spun on her heel, her eyes locking onto me like crosshairs. She yelled something about how I'd regret this and pay dearly. Seconds later, her tires screeched down the street, the sound lingering like an echo of her rage. 2 weeks later, the court date arrived. By that point, it was clear Hannah and her new partner, Christopher, believed they'd already secured victory. Hannah entered the courtroom with the flair of someone walking a fashion runway. Her outfit was a blatant display of wealth, every piece likely worth more than a month's rent. Her head was high, her eyes sharp and unforgiving as they locked onto me. Christopher followed close behind, strutting like a rooster in a pen of hens, his designer suit tailored to perfection. He leaned in to whisper something to Hannah, no doubt thinking himself a master strategist. The room wasn't packed, but there were enough spectators to witness the spectacle that was about to unfold. My lawyer, Mr. Collins, sat beside me, his face a mask of calm professionalism. Across the aisle, Hannah's legal team gathered like a battalion of overpaid soldiers ready to storm the gates. Christopher took a front row seat, arms folded, his face a portrait of self-importance. The hearing began with Hannah's attorney spinning a narrative so polished it could have been a movie script. I was cast as the negligent husband, unfit and unreliable. Hannah, meanwhile, was presented as the self-made success who'd outgrown me. Then it was Christopher's turn to testify, and he didn't hold back. He claimed I'd attacked him at my shop, ruining his suit and bruising his dignity. His performance was equal parts melodrama and fiction. I kept my mouth shut. Mr. Collins, ever the strategist, handled everything. "Your Honor," Collins began, his voice even and composed, "we have a piece of evidence that will provide much-needed clarity on Mr. Christopher's testimony." He gestured to the courtroom's screen. With a click, security footage from my workshop flickered to life. The video was grainy but clear enough. Christopher's voice boomed through the speakers as he spat threats and insults. Then came the turning point, the moment he was doused with water from the shop's hose. Gasps rippled through the courtroom, followed by a wave of stifled laughter as the footage showed Christopher's legs flailing before he hit the floor in a clumsy sprawl. "As you can see," Collins said, pausing the video on the frame of Christopher's less than dignified landing, "my client did not initiate any aggression. In fact, Mr. Christopher's version of events appears to be a work of pure imagination." That's out of context," Christopher stammered, his face burning red. "Out of context?" Collins's eyebrows lifted. "Please, Mr. Christopher, enlighten us. What context justifies barging into a man's workplace, hurling threats, and filing a false claim of assault?" Across the aisle, Hannah's lawyers shifted uncomfortably, their eyes glued to their notes. Collins pressed forward, dismantling every flimsy point they'd raised. Argument by argument, he took them apart with precision and patience. The second day's focus shifted to dividing assets, custody of the kids, and financial arrangements. Hannah's strategy was transparent. She wanted the house, full custody, and a chunk of my income. But Mr. Collins had come prepared. "We have documented proof," he announced, sliding forward a stack of bank records, "that Mrs. Hannah misappropriated joint funds to finance her affair with Mr. Christopher." He laid out travel itineraries, hotel receipts, and invoices for luxury items, all purchased with our shared finances. Hannah's lawyer objected, but the evidence was irrefutable. Collins then revealed documentation of how I'd supported Hannah's education and career advancement throughout our marriage. "My client invested in his wife's future," Collins declared, "and now that she's reaped the rewards, she's attempting to leave him with nothing." Custody was next on the docket. Hannah's team argued that I was unfit to be a full-time parent. Collins countered with testimonials from my sister and letters from my children's teachers, all praising my role in their lives. "Mr. Kevin has consistently shown dedication to his children's well-being," Collins concluded. "His actions speak for themselves." Meanwhile, Mrs. Hannah's attention has clearly shifted from family obligations to self-interest. By the end of the first hearing, Hannah's case was crumbling. The final blow came when Christopher abandoned her. Rumor had it that he'd pushed her employer to fire her, hoping to distance himself from the fallout. Without his support, her legal team's resolve waned. At the second hearing, Hannah's confidence had vanished. Her attorney's arguments were weak, and their attempts to salvage the case failed. The judge's decision was swift. I kept the house, secured full custody of the kids, and retained the lion's share of our assets. Hannah was left with only her personal items and a warning from the judge. As I walked out of the courthouse, the weight on my chest lifted. Hannah had aimed to ruin me. Christopher had tried to break me, but neither had the resolve to see it through. This wasn't just a courtroom victory. It was proof that truth and perseverance triumph in the end. Life after the divorce wasn't easy. The kids were hurt and confused, and I did everything in my power to shield them from the storm. Some days were tougher than others, filled with questions I didn't know how to answer. But we managed, day by day. My machine shop kept my hands busy, and my kids kept my heart full. Hannah reached out a few times looking for closure or an honest conversation. I knew better. She wasn't after peace. She wanted an escape. But every bridge she'd had with me was long burned to ash. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with them. As for Christopher, his fall from grace was just as dramatic. With the courtroom spotlight gone, his bosses took a hard look at his track record. They didn't like what they found. Fired within months, he became a cautionary tale in industry circles. His name was mud, and no firm would touch him. Sometimes you don't have to chase revenge. Karma's faster than you think. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Claiming that nothing substantial has occurred is far from equating to nothing happened, as my wife so casually puts it. The well-worn saying about the grass not always being greener on the other side feels painfully apt in this situation. Without seeking my approval, my wife decided to go on a date. I locked the house, and now, our marriage feels like a shell of its former self. I'm at a complete loss on how to even begin unpacking this. First, I'm heartbroken beyond words. Second, I'm not convinced that writing about it will bring me any clarity. But here I am, trying anyway. Yesterday, Emma, referring to her as my wife now feels bitterly ironic, sat me down to announce she had plans for a date. I'm 33, she's 34, and we've been married for 6 years. We had mutually decided not to have children, focusing instead on crafting a fulfilling life together as a couple. Yet, a few months back, she started voicing dissatisfaction with the monotony of our life, hinting that having children might have brought more excitement. I assured her we could revisit the topic if that was something she truly wanted. There was still time to make such a life-altering decision. Almost immediately, though, she dismissed the idea, chalking it up to a fleeting midlife crisis. I thought nothing of it and let the matter drop. But yesterday, she blindsided me with something far more shocking. Out of nowhere, she told me she was going on a date with a coworker. A date. At first, I genuinely thought she was joking, some kind of dark, ill-timed prank. I even laughed nervously and said, "Nice one, you got me." Her expression, cold and unflinching, quickly wiped away any thoughts of humor. "No," she said plainly, "I'm serious." My brain refused to process her words. Who would ever anticipate their spouse calmly declaring their intention to go on a date with someone else, as if it were the most natural thing in the world? For a full 10 minutes, I genuinely thought she had to be messing with me. When I finally found the words to respond, I asked her why she'd suddenly made this decision. She explained without a hint of remorse that our life had grown too predictable and she wanted to do something exciting. Her solution? A dinner date with her coworker? She brushed off my shock with a casual shrug, labeling it just dinner and not a big deal. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She went on to justify her actions, reminding me of her earlier complaints about our monotonous routine and our failed attempts to spice things up. I countered by pointing out the changes we'd made: weekly date nights, planned weekend trips every few months, even trying some of her more unconventional suggestions. Her response was to yell that all our efforts still felt boring and uninspired. Then she began telling me about her coworker, Sylvester, who had confided in her about similar frustrations in his own marriage. Apparently, after numerous discussions, the two of them had come up with this genius idea to go on a casual date and see if it brought any excitement. I was floored. I asked if she realized how absurd and inappropriate her plan sounded. She dismissed me yet again, reiterating that it was just dinner and insisting I was overreacting. When I pressed her on why she was even calling it a date, she sighed heavily and claimed she was trying to be honest with me and hadn't expected such a dramatic response. Our conversation escalated quickly, turning heated. She eventually cut it short, saying she was running late and needed to get ready. I could barely believe her audacity. "Are you seriously still going?" I asked, dumbfounded. She shot back with an almost mocking tone. "Yes, I'm going and I'm done discussing this." This wasn't the first time she'd thrown out provocative remarks to rile me up, but this situation was different. It wasn't some lighthearted jab. I sat there in stunned silence as she got dressed for her so-called date. 5 minutes later, she peeked her head out of the room and nonchalantly told me to pretend this conversation never happened. Then, as though everything were perfectly normal, she strolled out in a striking red dress, pausing only to comment on my flushed face and joke about how much fun she was about to have. I tried to calm myself, repeating over and over that it was just dinner and nothing more, but the tightness in my chest wouldn't go away. Unable to sit still, I called a friend and asked him to meet me for a drink. When we met, I hesitated to tell him the full story and instead presented it as a hypothetical scenario. His reaction was maddening. He dismissed the entire thing, saying it sounded like an innocent, casual dinner in a public setting. His nonchalance did nothing to soothe my anxiety. I stayed at the bar, nursing my drink until Emma called and asked me to come home. To my surprise, she was already back, and it wasn't even 9 p.m. A part of me felt an embarrassing surge of relief, hoping it meant nothing had happened between her and her coworker. As pathetic as it sounds, I was genuinely happy she was home. After an exhausting day, I finally made it back home. She darted toward me and wrapped me in a fierce hug, yet my mind was elsewhere. A nagging feeling told me she might be concocting some elaborate story, perhaps just to mess with my head or test my patience. You know how unpredictable women can be. I asked her directly, "What's going on?" She motioned for me to take a seat and launched into an animated explanation. Her words spilled out, brimming with excitement. She described her date as exhilarating, saying it had awakened a part of her she hadn't felt alive in years. She confessed that they were already planning a weekend trip together. My head spun. What was happening? Was I losing my grip on reality? I leapt to my feet, frustration and anger bubbling over. She grabbed my hands, her attempt to soothe me futile. She insisted it was all harmless, a way to reignite the spark in her own life. "Don't you want me to feel like myself again?" she asked. "To be the old Emma, full of life and energy? Just 2 hours with him brought me halfway back to that." She pressed on. "You know I love you. This is only going to make our relationship stronger." My voice shook with disbelief as I shot back. "Let me get this straight. You're planning to sleep with this guy over the weekend, and you think that's somehow going to help our marriage?" Unfazed, she nodded. "Exactly," she said. My self-control slipped further. I demanded to know if they'd already slept together. Fury surged through me, but I held back. She stepped closer, swearing that nothing physical had happened yet, but admitted she was committed to the trip. She claimed it wasn't about love or betrayal. It was about fulfilling a fantasy she had been holding on to. The boldness of her words floored me. She leaned in closer and whispered, "Talking about this makes me so turned on. Do you want to feel it?" That was it. My anger exploded and I shouted, asking why she hadn't already gone through with it if that's what she wanted. She yelled back, saying they were building anticipation for the weekend. Her determination was unrelenting. No matter how much I protested, she was resolute in her decision. I couldn't stand another second in that house. Fueled by anger and alcohol, I left before I did something reckless. I called a friend and crashed on his couch. The next morning I went back home to grab my things for work. She was still in bed, sleeping peacefully, as though nothing had happened. The sight was infuriating. As I got ready, she appeared behind me, slipping her arms around me and whispering, "I love you." I shrugged her off, but she persisted. "I know you're upset, but I also know you love me enough to let me do this. Don't you want me to be happy?" I said nothing. I simply walked out the door, feeling hollow and shattered. The thought of Saturday, her day with him, consumed me. I knew our marriage couldn't survive this. Even if there had been a chance to salvage it, I no longer wanted to. My only desire now was to make her pay for what she had done. Deep down, I sensed this wasn't just about a date. Something more was at play. Determined not to let her walk away unscathed, I started formulating a plan. By Thursday night, I had decided to act. If she wanted to be reckless, she would face the fallout. By Saturday, I would ensure she was left out in the cold, both figuratively and literally. I bought a new lock and scheduled a locksmith for Saturday morning. I also ordered a new nameplate for the house, with only my name on it. That evening, I came home to find her parading around in sheer lingerie. Smirking, she asked, "Don't I look irresistible? I want to look my best for Saturday." I didn't dignify her with a response, though rage simmered inside me. The next day, I skipped work to finalize my preparations. I wasn't interested in saving our relationship anymore. All I wanted was proof of her betrayal so she couldn't spin the story later. Secretly, I began recording her as she continued to defend her actions. "So, you're really going through with this, even knowing how I feel about it?" I asked, pushing for clarity. She traced her fingers over my lips and laughed. "What's the big deal? I love you and this is just a bit of fun. Think of it like you going fishing or playing golf. It's no different." I pressed harder. "You're saying you're okay with sleeping with your coworker knowing it'll destroy me?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said. "It's just intimacy. I'm not falling in love and leaving you. I love you, but I want to live life to the fullest and experience everything I've dreamed of." Her words left me disgusted, but I let her keep talking for the sake of the recording. The more she justified her plans, the more I realized how far gone she was. Later, I shared everything with my friend for the first time. I laid it all bare, every painful detail. He was stunned, but supportive. By the end of our conversation, I had made up my mind. I was done with her. I was ready to end the marriage. He referred me to a lawyer who had helped his uncle through a tough divorce. By the time I returned home, my plan was fully in motion. She lay comfortably in bed while I grabbed a blanket and a pillow. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice uncertain. I didn't hesitate to reply sharply. "Why do you even care?" Her gaze lingered on me, searching. "Do you remember the promises we made? The one where we swore never to spend a night apart?" I slammed the pillow down onto the bed, my frustration boiling over. "Oh, we're talking about promises now? Great. How about the one where we vowed to stay loyal to each other, or does that one not count anymore?" She let out a deep sigh, muttering something under her breath about me being unreasonable before turning her back to me. I couldn't bring myself to share a bed with someone whose thoughts wandered to another man while lying beside me. Gathering my things, I moved to the couch. On Friday night, she spent hours getting ready, fussing over her appearance and meticulously packing for her weekend trip. Meanwhile, my afternoon was spent meeting with a divorce attorney to discuss my terms. I presented the audio recordings I had collected, and he advised me to secure additional proof of her whereabouts during the trip, though he believed the recordings alone were substantial. Early Saturday morning, as she showered, I rifled through her packed bag. I swapped out her tube of lubricant with another identical container that I had filled with a spicy concoction of my own making. Knowing her aversion to discomfort, I doubted she'd risk going without it. The thought of the chaos that would ensue later was satisfying. The resort she had chosen was tucked away in the woods, meaning replacing the item would be difficult. Next, I turned to her phone for further evidence. While her messages didn't specify the exact location, they were littered with explicit exchanges detailing how she and her lover planned to finally act on their desires. Although it seemed they hadn't crossed that line yet, the damage to our marriage was already done. Lacking time to take proper screenshots, I snapped photos of the messages with my own phone. If you're wondering how I accessed her device, it was simple. We had always shared our passwords. It's just that Until now, I had never felt compelled to invade her privacy. When she emerged from the shower, I casually asked, "So, where are you headed today?" She smirked, clearly enjoying her little secret. "Why the sudden interest?" she countered. I fired back, "If your boyfriend accidentally strangles you, I'd at least like to know where to collect your body." She laughed, and after some teasing, revealed the name of the resort. I promptly forwarded the information to my lawyer, who assured me he'd confirm their stay. Later, a car horn sounded in the driveway. She wasn't ready yet, but went to the window to signal her ride. "Don't even think about letting him step foot in this house," I warned. "If he does, you'll both leave in pieces." She laughed dismissively and leaned out the window, telling him to wait in the car. Once she left, I wasted no time. I called a locksmith to change all the locks, removed her name from the nameplate by the door, and packed her belongings into garbage bags, which I stored in the backyard. As I stood in front of her now empty closet, the weight of the situation overwhelmed me. I collapsed onto the floor and sobbed like a child for hours. By evening, I faced a choice: wallow in my misery or take control of my life. I opted for the latter. After a long, hot shower, I went out with a friend who had been a pillar of support throughout this ordeal. Now it's Sunday. I began the day with an intense workout at the gym to clear my head. Back at home, I sat down to write this update. Tonight, she's supposed to return, and I'm bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation when she finds herself locked out. Update 2. Emma's much-anticipated weekend didn't deliver the thrill she had expected. She returned earlier than planned, and her demeanor said it all. The excitement she left with was replaced by frustration and anger. Her makeup was smeared, her expression tense, and she trudged up the driveway without so much as a goodbye to her partner, who dropped her off. Approaching the door, she pulled out her key but quickly realized it no longer worked. Confused, she tried a backup set, only to find they were useless as well. I observed the scene from the camera I had installed above the entrance. She threw her bag and wallet to the ground, cursing loudly. Then she began pounding on the door and ringing the bell, shouting, "Are you home? Why isn't the door opening?" I sent her a single text: "Check the nameplate in the backyard." Then I blocked her number. It didn't take long for her to piece things together. Realizing she was locked out and unwelcome, she screamed my name and hammered on the door, demanding to be let in. I called out from an upstairs window, "If you don't leave, I'll send those recordings to your parents and friends." Her face turned ashen. "You recorded me?" she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why are you doing this? I'm freezing out here. Please let me in. It's so cold after that long drive." But I didn't budge. I let her plead as the cold seeped in. She wasn't coming back. Not into this house, and not into my life. Regret and guilt are already devouring me over the decisions I've made. That man ignored my boundaries, forcing himself on me even though I insisted nothing would happen without proper precautions. I was frozen, stunned by the weight of what had happened. When I opened the door to her, she stepped inside, her face clouded with anguish. She reached out to hug me, but I instinctively raised my arm to stop her. She sank onto the couch, collapsing under the weight of her emotions, and began to cry uncontrollably. For a moment, I just stood there, silent and uncertain about how to proceed. Finally, I broke the stillness, asking why she hadn't sought help. The lump in my throat grew as I forced myself to ask the tougher question: "Did he assault you?" Her sobbing intensified before she managed to reply, "Not exactly. He manipulated me, said it wouldn't hurt, but it did. When I told him to stop, he wouldn't." I pressed further, asking if this was an isolated event. Her response floored me. "No, it happened 3 or 4 times. Each time he convinced me to try again." I stared at her, disbelief and anger rising within me. "And you agreed every time?" I asked. She nodded silently. My frustration boiled over and I couldn't hold back. "You're unbelievable. Do you think I'm stupid enough to fall for this? You're not some naive teenager who doesn't know how to make choices. You were at a resort, not imprisoned in his house. Why didn't you just leave?" Her tears turned into hysterical sobs as she pleaded. "The resort was in the middle of a forest. I had no idea how to escape." I countered. "A forest, sure, but it wasn't deserted. There were staff, other guests, anyone who could have helped you. And why didn't you call me if you were so terrified? She kept crying, unable to offer a coherent answer. Eventually, I told her to leave, saying she'd hear from me within the week. She begged me desperately, "Please don't do this. I'm already drowning in guilt over what I've done. You've made your point by refusing to forgive me, but don't destroy me. I swear I'll be a good wife from now on." I didn't waver. "This marriage ended the moment you went on a date behind my back," I replied with icy finality. She tried to defend herself, insisting, "Nothing major happened. He barely even got inside me. You know I need lubricant for anything like that to work." I laughed bitterly. "Good for you," I said, "but that doesn't change a thing. I warned you about the consequences and now they're here." Her sobs redoubled. "I thought our relationship was strong enough to get through this. I love you and I know you love me." My voice was cold as steel. "I did love you. Now I can't stand the sight of you. Leave before I send recordings of our conversations to your parents." Her face turned pale as the realization hit her. "You've been recording this?" she asked, horrified. "Of course," I replied. "I'm not foolish enough to have this conversation without proof." She tried to shift the narrative again, claiming she intended to press charges against Sylvester and needed my support. I laughed in her face. "You'll handle that on your own, just like you'll handle our divorce." She pleaded with me not to abandon her during such a difficult time, but I was done. Opening the door, I said, "You wanted excitement? Well, now you've got it. Enjoy juggling 2 court cases at once. Goodbye." After a drawn-out argument, she finally left. Later, I sent the divorce papers to her office, only to learn that she had already resigned. Left with no alternative, I forwarded the papers to her parents' home. Before they arrived, I decided to visit her parents personally to explain what was happening. They had always treated me with kindness, and I felt they deserved to hear the truth from me first. When I arrived alone, they immediately asked where Emma was. I answered bluntly, telling them we were divorcing and that I didn't know where she had gone. Their concern was evident. I offered a vague explanation. She had gone out with a colleague against my wishes, and I couldn't forgive her. Her mother called Emma on the spot, and she claimed to be staying with her best friend, Olivia, promising to return by the weekend. Knowing Olivia's reputation as Emma's confidant, her mother called to confirm the story. Olivia reassured her that Emma was safe, but deeply upset. Hearing this brought me a strange mix of relief and detachment. As my anger began to subside, I couldn't ignore the small pang of worry for her. Quitting her job and paying such a steep price for her choices didn't mean I could welcome her back. Not now. Not ever. That's all I can say for now. The terms of the divorce are still being finalized, so there's nothing more to discuss. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.